Reputation
he
as
must have been the hottest guy that you ever dated, don't you think?
He was cute, no, but he was really withholding.
What?
He was really withholding.
There you go again.
What?
What? It's always something wrong with somebody else.
No?
Yes, it is. The Cirque du Soleil guy wasn't flexible enough, and then you dumped Jason Chang because he wasn't ambitious enough.
That's not true. Jason Chang dumped me.
Because you said he wasn't ambitious enough.
No, because I said he wasn't masculine enough. Hey, that's important to me. I'm not talking Tom of Finland masculine. I just want someone butcher than me and less masculine than Chastity Bono.
Okay, it's not about masculine. And when was the last time you brushed your teeth? Jesus, Juarez wasn't smart enough. And Etienne, he didn't speak English well enough. And then Paolo, he wasn't musical enough. And of course me, I never dressed well enough.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We're your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
And me.
And this week we're talking about the mostly unfabulous social life of Ethan Green from 2005. You found this one somewhere,
I did.
Somehow.
It was one of my rare... I would think I was just browsing and looking at lists of films based on comic strips or comic books.
Yeah.
And I celebrate when I find one that you didn't spot.
Yeah.
Because you collected a long list before we even started the podcast.
Yeah.
So when I spy one that hadn't made it onto the list yet, I feel a real sense of achievement.
I'm still not seeing it on a lot of lists.
No.
I still find other lists that it's strangely absent from. Well, maybe not strangely. This is very, very obscure stuff.
I think
this is real Oblivion land.
Very much so. Very much so, yeah. I mean, we start with a fairly obscure comic.
Yeah.
Go on to a very obscure movie.
Yeah.
And the comic wound up the year the movie came out.
Yeah,
and then
I have
it's just
questions about
vanished.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
well, I can answer those, but when we get to
okay, good. All right, so this is based on a comic strip by Eric Orner. Eric Orner was a political cartoonist initially, but then he ran this strip, The Mostly Unfabulous Social Life of Ethan Green, from 1989 or 90, different sources say different, up till 2005, as we just mentioned. So it ran for 15 years.
It's a good run.
Yeah, in alternative newspapers, and mostly, I guess, get a lot of gay press, like underground.
It seems to have been mostly gay press, so newspapers or periodicals that were devoted
But I did see a figure that it was running in 100 different papers, including 25 big city alt weeklies.
That I saw that confirmed in an interview with
Right.
Orner himself. He said that it ran in at least 100 papers.
Right. So that's so it's kind of similar to what Derf Baxter, that scene, and his art style is similar to what Derf's style was at that time, which is a really
That's true, actually.
odd, inconsistent, loosey-goosey kind of...
It reminds me kind of Duckman.
Yes. Yes, Duckman as well. And also for context, Alison Bechdel's Dykes to Watch Out For ran from 83 to 2008. So this is cushioned right in there.
Yeah. This is often... Yeah, I mean, they're compared to Dykes to Watch Out For. And Orner's addressed it himself in an interview I read. In 2015, so 10 years after the movie came out, in an article called Rekindling the Mostly Unfabulous Social Life of Ethan Green on Extra... in Extra magazine... he responded to that saying that he had set out to write something like Dykes to Watch Out For, but he hadn't seen Dykes to Watch Out For. He claims.
Interesting.
He says, there was a good cartoon about women and about the lives of women that you might know, he says, presumably ironically. Not superheroes, not biker dykes that were members of crime-avenging gangs, just women who worked in a bookstore. That formula, which I came to separately... I didn't really come to it by reading Dykes to Watch Out For. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell stories about the lives of gay men who I knew or would recognise. It meant average guys that happened to be gay. By average, I don't mean uninteresting or unfunny. I just mean people that didn't look like a Halloween costume when they walked down the street.
Yeah.
So like leather-clad blokes or whatever.
Right.
Or the village people or something like that, I guess.
It's interesting because I saw this... There's not a lot of information about this movie, but I found this review on this site called slantmagazine.com, and they slammed the movie, but they also slammed the strip, saying the strip was shallow.
Right.
And my feeling was, why does it have to be more than shallow? Why does it have to compete with Dykes to Watch Out For? It can just be its own slightly lighthearted thing. It does. Yeah. There is some heavy stuff, and also this strip is very flexible. So basically it's about this character, Ethan Green, who's this very ordinary dude, the first couple of strips are about him coming out and like trying to go to a gay bar for the first time and being really nervous and hiding in the corner and seeing all these kind of odd characters that he's not used to, like the guy that's hanging around the jukebox, etc., stuff like this. But then you'll get, like, his cat kind of has thoughts like Garfield. So the cat is kind of a participant in the strip.
Yes.
And sometimes there's, like, almost like dream sequences or surreal sequences. There's one where he ends up in this giant hallway of filing cabinets that are full of data about his old crushes.
Yes.
Going through his entire history. But then sometimes they're just he does have some very just factual strips about whatever relationship that Ethan is in at that time.
Yeah, you wouldn't call it formulaic because he's always mixing it up.
Yeah.
He'll have like these stories about these characters called the Hat Sisters, who are clearly fantastical. It's like they're sort of like bearded or mustached old queens wearing fancy hats, like you would wear to the races.
Crazy hats. Some of them are like really like not realistic hats. They're like, I can't describe them.
And it'll be in the style of a fable.
Yeah.
You know, like someone will have committed an offence against...
there's usually some, like, homophobic policy that takes place at, like, I think Cracker Barrel restaurants is one.
That's the first one.
So they go off across the country to go to these Cracker Barrels, and they bring all their queens together, and they overrun these restaurants, and they're, like, really loud at a table, so all people start leaving until finally... Cracker Barrel's management changes their policies.
Or there's a particular kind of United States senator whose name I forget, but was a famous kind of like homophobe.
I think it was J.C. Helms, maybe?
Yeah, Jesse Helms. And he, you know, they'll be like, he's like their bête noir. So they'll always be hypnotizing him into supporting gay marriage or something weird like that. And these strips will not feature Ethan Green, the Ethan Green character, who I think is pretty much a self-insert for Eric Orner.
Yeah.
They'll just be in their own setting. Yeah. And then there will be strips that remind me a bit of Dan Clowes. So not quite...
Right.
Because there's only one Dan Clowes.
Yeah.
But they're similar. There'll be... It's like some hilariously obscure system of categorization of types of ex-boyfriends.
Yes. Yeah. Or, like, there's ones that were, like, dancers at the club. Some of these strips I really laughed at, especially this one, because there's this guy called the Pointer who points at you with each finger and then points at the ceiling and then points back at you over and over again. This is this guy's dance move.
These are funny, and when I saw those, I was like, oh yeah, I like this.
Yeah.
Because it reminded me of Dan Clowes.
Yeah, there's like ones where it's like the like gay pet owners and there's like the Christmas presents. There's those kinds of listicle ones.
Yeah, listicle, good.
Interesting thing, I mean, it's almost a cliche to say, but for a lot of these strips, they're not specifically homosexual. If you know what I mean, like the dancers and the Christmas presents ones, even the one where he's in bed with this guy for the first time and he can't fall asleep.
Yep.
And this guy's got his arm across him.
Yep.
I mean, this is not specific to homosexuals. Like,
no.
Yeah.
No, quite often it's just kind of like wry observations about relationships.
Yes.
And the two characters in the panel just happen to be both men.
Yes.
Where it would work just as well for any. So there's quite a lot of stuff like that. But then there's a lot of content that's
absolutely
specific to the kind of like this gay... You wouldn't even call it subculture, because I think he's trying to avoid subculture. I think his point...
And in fact, there's an interesting thing here. Well... He's avoiding it, but there's some early strips where definitely there's factions, like these people that want to be called queers, people that don't want to be called queers, that want to be called gay or homosexual. I can't remember what the debate was.
So this is a slice of history, clearly, because these were, I imagine, the concerns for...
Yeah.
And in that respect, like, the comic sort of existed at a time, unlike... Or less like now, when homosexuals were much less accepted, I think.
Yes.
So, you know, like the idea of gay marriage and things like that was so impossibly distant on the horizon, and people weren't telling these kinds of stories except in things like queer press and in this specific kind of cartoon. But, yeah, as you say, he seems, like you said in that quote I read earlier about Dykes to Watch Out For, he's less interested in the extreme elements of the gay subculture and more about just the culture of people who happen to be gay and are leading lives. That don't happen to be leather daddies or what's something else he said? I'll see if I can find it later.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got the quote.
Yeah.
Inspiration. This one's from a article that appeared also in 2015. 25 years later, an Unfabulous comic strip holds up. This appeared in SF Gate, that's San Francisco. I wanted to tell what I saw as our story. I wanted to write about just average gay guys. I didn't want to write about guys who were dressing up as drag queens and driving giant vans across the Australian desert. I didn't want to write about superhuman-looking Tom of Finland, leather daddies, all of that. I like all of that, but I wanted to write about people's everyday lives, and I wasn't seeing a lot of that then.
Yeah, interesting. I guess the Hat Sisters are maybe the most extreme characters, but they're usually really funny.
They're clearly meant to be faintly ridiculous.
Yes.
Because they have moustaches and they're...
Yes, and they have those crazy hats.
Yes, the crazy hats, obviously.
Yes, they're like Carmen Miranda hats. Like, they're really over-the-top stuff. Sometimes it's like they're wearing some kind of, like, table setting on their head of some sort. So, in the early strips, especially when Ethan is just coming out, he's kind of finding his way. He starts dating this guy, Ted. He's got his friend, Bucky.
Yeah.
He's got these two lesbian friends that maybe live in the same building. And he starts dating this guy, Ted, who has this kind of, like, lame taste in music. He meets him at a record store.
Yeah.
He likes, like, kind of old-fashioned, kind of almost country folk kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then he immediately switches over to this guy, Leo.
Yeah.
Who seems like more of a dangerous bad boy, maybe.
Yeah, so there are recurring characters.
Yes, there are recurring characters like those guys. One of these, now, later on, we start to get into... The AIDS starts coming into the strip.
Yeah.
One of his partners ends up with AIDS and breaks up with Ethan, because he doesn't want Ethan to have to be forced into a position of having to care for him when he gets sick.
Yeah.
So, again, with the flexibility of the strip, it really can go quite heavy sometimes, but sometimes quite satirical. Like, he has this recurring character, this fortune teller that has a crystal ball, but then later on they go into this power crystals shop, and Ethan's like, I can't believe you guys believe in this stuff. This is so ridiculous.
But he's always seeing the fortune teller.
Yes. And there's some strips where he's like...
One thing I did notice is that no one's going to therapy in these comics.
That's right.
And also in the film.
Yes.
And it's a conspicuous absence that no one's going to therapy, I think. Yeah. And this fortune teller is the substitute. And in fact, she's often telling him that he's too cheap to see a therapist.
Yes.
So he's seeing her instead. Yes. She's completely useless. And her crystal ball can only play popular songs.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's another one that was really funny was I think he had broken up with one of the boyfriends. I can't remember who it was. Maybe Terry. And Ethan's... the strip is kind of in two halves. In the first part, Ethan is... all woe is me about this breakup. Meanwhile, Terry is working at a hospice across town, taking care of people that are dying, like literally dying. And it was a really funny kind of biting contrast that was like poking at Ethan for his being shallow a little bit, or not, not seeing the big picture of how much worse things could be.
Yeah, Ethan is... in the strip, Ethan is a kind of hopeless character.
Yes.
So he's pathetic. He's often on the wrong side of an issue. He's self-destructive, but he has a kind of charm that these characters often have in strips. Right. You tune in, as it were, or show up, open the page, to see what kind of silly situation he's got himself into this week with his, his spineless nature.
Yeah.
And it has a certain charm.
Yes.
Like seeing Garfield's laziness or, something like that.
Yes. And then sometimes there's like a few that are like, there's some political commentary in there.
Yeah.
Some complaining about, I can't believe we're living under George Bush kind of stuff. Or about gay Republicans, that comes up.
Yeah, there's a lot about gay Republicans. That makes it into the film,
That does make it in the movie. Meanwhile, there's some hilarious characters, like he dates this guy who's in Cirque du Soleil and brings him home to have dinner with Mom, and the guy's in his full circus outfit at the table. He also dates this other guy, Etienne, from Montreal, and then it turns out that the guy is wanted by the RCMP for dealing meth or making meth or something like that. They actually come knocking at his door.
Meth in the amphetamines. Yeah, that's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Yeah.
The Mounties, for those of us that aren't necessarily plugged into Canadian minutiae.
So
that's and there are bits that definitely I found funny.
Yeah,
especially when it was Klaus-like.
Yes.
So,
that's the stuff I found funny too.
When there was one bit called I think Health Club from Another Planet, where everyone was reversed,
yes,
and it was the straight guys that cared the most about getting fat because they might lose their girlfriends, and stuff like that. I did chuckle reading those.
Yeah,
and he also has a kind of like a running bit about Midwesterny guy.
Yes, there's a guy who has like infomercials on TV who's like this gay Midwestern guy that gives you advice
how to be a Midwestern guy. This is, I think, fairly kind of specific to the American context, but I think people from the Midwest have a reputation for being outdoorsy, well-built, and very friendly.
Right.
Which I maybe is a trope for an attractive man. So, Midwesterny guy often shows up hawking his infomercials or his pamphlets or what have you.
Yeah.
It was another bit that I found quite funny.
Yeah. I did notice there were some references to Matt Groening's life in hell.
Right, really? I didn't...
There was one or two strips that mentioned Akbar and Jeff, who were this kind of weird gay couple that were in Life in Hell that showed up. Now, Life in Hell ran from 1977 to 2012. Wow. So that's even outside of Dykes to Watch Out For. It's like he was still doing it when
The Simpsons
he was a millionaire.
Yeah.
He was absolutely, but Groening was one of the guys that was still supporting like underground comics, and there were stories he would go into the comic shops and just buy all the undergrounds on the shelves. He was a big booster. I couldn't tell reading these strips if Orner was like, yay, Matt Groening, or this guy, what's this millionaire doing hanging out here doing Akbar and Jeff strips? I don't know what the scoop was there, but anyway. Is there anything else we need to get into on this
I'll just
strip?
say that Orner himself was decidedly not a millionaire.
Right.
He had a day job when he was working on these strips.
Right.
So he always had... I think he worked in computers or something or other.
Yeah.
So he would work on these strips in the evenings and weekends.
Okay.
And publish one a week.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yes, that's a big workload for 15 years.
I did notice there was a couple of strips where Ethan gets a new job and tries to figure out if his boss is gay. And then tries to like ask him out or something like that. He's trying to work it out.
If he changed careers, it's beyond the scope of my research.
Right. But I had a feeling that like you said, seems like Orner must have been pulling stuff from 100%. His life.
I think Ethan Green is Eric Orner. I reckon. I mean, clearly it's not him, but
it's not. You know what the thing is? It's really hard because of the way it's drawn. It's hard to get a bead on how attractive Ethan is. But if you look at the author photos of Eric Orner,
he's really handsome.
He's a really good-looking guy. Yeah. And I don't know what that scene is like. I don't know how much trouble this guy would have picking and choosing whatever partners he wanted. I mean, the real Eric Orner, based on those photos. Now, maybe I'm being naive, and he would be just as nervous and struggling. It's a big jumble of stuff, obviously, including stuff from his own life.
Sure. Speaking of changing careers, so I said that I didn't know whether or not he changed careers, but he did change careers in 2005, which was when he stopped drawing the strip and went to work for Disney.
Okay.
Yeah, he actually moved to California and worked as an animator.
Okay.
According to what I read, for Disney's Tinkerbell.
Huh. Well, is that a TV series?
I don't know. I didn't think to take the next step. But he was eventually laid off from that job. He said, he joked, it turned out I was much better at drawing the kind of fairies with muscles and biceps.
That's clever. Okay, let's talk about this weird movie.
Oh, yeah.
Very weird. Now, mention low budget, but you really don't understand unless you watch this thing. It looks like Birdemic. It looks like it was shot on Handycam.
Yes. It looks very cheap.
very cheap. Apparently, like Wikipedia says, here's the guy that wrote the music. The music to me sounded like it was all bought from stock music sources.
Yep.
Okay, directed by somebody named George Bamber. Don't know anything about him. Written by David Vernon. Don't know anything about him. I think Vernon maybe had 5 or 6 credits that were all like queer focused. Maybe.
Yeah.
I might be wrong about that. I can't remember exactly. The actor playing Ethan is this guy named Daniel Letterle. Mm-hmm. He did about 5 movies and then retired.
Okay.
This is like his last. And then he went, it says, you look at Wikipedia or whatever, it says he moved back to Ohio and he just living there.
Okay.
But I found this Instagram post by this guy, this actor, or not, I don't know, he was some Instagram, I don't know who this person was, but he was singing this guy's praises and saying, from 2003 to 2005, all gay men were in love with this guy. And he had done, like, of this 5 credits, like 3 were, like, queer focused films.
Yes. Oh, for sure. I mean, watching this film, not counting Condom of Horror and De Bevechte Man, we haven't really done any queer cinema on the podcast.
Right.
But it feels like everything about this movie screams queer subculture, or queer cinema.
Yes.
Like, this is actors that have acted in queer films.
Absolutely.
The production company was called Production Zone Incorporated, has no other credits on IMDb, but the distributor was Here! Films, which is a subsidiary of a larger multimedia company that produces exclusively LGBTQ television.
Okay.
So this, I imagine this is a film made for the queer film circuit.
Right.
Because there are film festivals that deal exclusively in this material.
Right.
And I feel like it was made for that.
Okay. So...
My IMDb page now just shows all, like, recommendations of all these films along the bottom now.
Yes.
And definitely didn't before.
Right. So we get these title cards which show like a cameo image of the character, and then it says like our romantic hero Ethan Green. This is how the books, the volumes of the collections of comics start out, with kind of recaps of who the characters are.
Except it's a bit of a bait and switch, isn't it? Like these look like panels from the comic where he would do stuff like this. He would have a box and caption, and it would be a Klaus-like funny categorization or listicle, of these different of the types of people you encounter at art school or what have you. But then it turns out it's a bit of a bait and switch, because it transpires that it's actually a board game.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. So he's pulling the board game out. Yes.
There's a bit of a framing device here.
Yeah.
So this seems like this is pre-Marvel. So this came out in 2005.
Yeah.
So maybe this seemed like an odd choice to me. Why not lean into the comic? This was a fairly successful, or at least mildly successful, gay comic that ran for 15 years. Why not lean into that? We've seen it many times in the credits, like showing panels or captions.
Yeah.
Why not lean into that? Why instead use this framing device that instead it's...
You're right.
It's a board game called Perfect Date.
Dream Date.
Dream Date. So it's kind of like that game that they're playing in that episode of The Simpsons where they go down the beach.
Right.
Where Bart ends up with the dud. And Homer gets the hunk and he says, "Don't wait up much." So it's like that. Why use this framing device instead of the comic?
Yeah, well, because it comes back again and again through the movie, we get flashbacks that Ethan played this game as a child and lost. He kept getting the dud boyfriend. Yes. He would play with a group of girls when he was 7, 8, 9 years old or something like that.
That's true. And it's shown as a sort of like an explanation for why he is the way he is.
Yeah.
Because he's an absolute commitment phobe in this film. In a way, he's not really in the comic.
No.
Here, his defining characteristic is that he can't commit to anyone, and he gets cold feet as soon as someone gets serious.
Yes, to extremes that are not explained or make sense in the movie.
No, really frustrating.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. We'll get through it.
And this board game is offered as, I guess, an explanation for what... Or not even an explanation, because you couldn't say he was traumatized by the board game. It's more like... It's a sort of analogy for his character.
Yes.
That he's worried about... He's always holding out for someone better or something like that. But it's not like a causative thing.
Yeah.
But Yeah, to return to the credits, a bit disappointing that they didn't. And I think it's probably because maybe at this stage comics are still a bit maybe daggy.
but the sections of the books I was talking about, specifically in volume 2 and 3, which I found online, the first few pages, they give you a recap of who the characters are. So it's not like the listicle bits.
You're right.
But it's like those kind of recaps a little bit.
Right, so I haven't made up my mind whether this is clever or if this is a clever adaptation or whether they're shying away from the origins.
It's weird because there's a gag in there about his boss at work who's not in the movie.
Yeah,
it says he's not in the movie. And that's kind of like the...
You're right.
There's a thing about this movie, some of the writing is there. Some of the ideas are there. The problem is the execution.
Oh, 100%.
They just didn't have the money or sometimes the talent to pull off the gags that have been written down on the page.
That's true.
They don't have the money to even do a different camera setup to make a gag work better or something like that.
Yes.
So we learn about all the characters, including the Hat Sisters. We'll talk about them more.
Yes, we will.
Sure. And they're living in this place called Villa Ryan, which was confusing because it was owned by this guy named Leo.
Yes.
Who was an ex-boyfriend of Ethan's from 2 years ago. They moved into this house together.
Yep.
Then they broke up. Leo still owns the house, but he's moved out.
Yes, and he rents it to, or perhaps just lets Ethan live in it.
I think he's also got, there's another girl, there's Charlotte. She's a character that shows up in the comic later on. She's like she's this black lady, but she's like the voice of reason, I think, in the comic.
Very much so. And she's like that in this film as well.
Yes.
And it doesn't hurt that she's kind of like a magical Negro.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it okay for me to say that?
Yeah, absolutely. Spike Lee was the one that came up with that term. So if Spike wants us to use it, I'm saying we use it.
Yeah. Yes. And she was a little bit like that in the comic, but she was especially like that in the film. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think in the comic, I didn't get that from her. Because there were 100 other people running around.
In fact, when she first popped up in the comic, I thought she might even have been Alison Bechdel.
Oh, right.
Until she was eventually named as Charlotte.
Right. Okay, so opening scene, Ethan is reading a book in the park. He's eating an apple. He's reading a book about this called Finding the Boyfriend Within.
Yep.
He's hit in the head by a frisbee, and then
it's a baseball.
Oh, baseball! And then the guy that hit him in the head with baseball comes over and gives him mouth to mouth.
Don't think you need mouth to mouth.
No. So first of all, so this guy, his name, he turns out to be named Kyle.
Yep.
He is a he is a baseball player who just came out. He was married, so he's left his wife.
Yep.
And as far as I can tell from this mouth-to-mouth scene, are we supposed to get that he's a complete idiot that doesn't know that you don't give mouth-to-mouth for a person with concussion?
This is an example of jokes that don't work.
Or is it, is it just a joke that
it's a joke that didn't work.
Yeah.
Kyle has basically sexually assaulted somebody.
Right.
Because, of course, it transpires that he's gay.
Yes.
As you said, he's come out.
Yeah.
So an objective reading is that he just sexually assaulted Ethan.
Mm-hmm.
But the joke was supposed to be that he needed mouth-to-mouth and he fell for the hunky guy giving him mouth-to-mouth. But it doesn't work.
Right.
Because you don't need mouth-to-mouth after being hit.
Right.
At least, why not just set this scene at the beach? The comic is full of strips set at the beach.
They can't go shoot at the beach. This is part of the problem. They're very limited in terms of sets.
Oh my god!
You know what? This is set in California.
Yeah.
Which is a different vibe from the East Coast that we got in the comic.
For sure.
Where they're just driving back and forth to Montreal.
They're in California. They couldn't go to the beach.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. This was shot in 2 weeks.
By the way, I think they only had one type of camera.
Yeah.
Because
it doesn't work.
The
in all
outside
light
looks really bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's interior and it's not natural light, if it's like nighttime, they're in a restaurant, maybe it's passable.
Yeah.
But anytime they're outdoors, it really looks like a Neil Breen movie or something like that.
It's really grainy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're completely right. And I wouldn't be surprised they had only one camera.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know how to light a scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't know how to block a scene because half the time, and sometimes this is a problem that we've mentioned in previous weeks, but it was especially egregious this week. it was in Dylan Dog. Someone's not boomed up because the dialogue fades in and out sometimes.
Yeah.
And this one I didn't have subtitles for this.
Yeah.
Sometimes I didn't know what people were saying.
Yeah.
But Dylan Dogs cost a lot more than this movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. So Ethan has fallen in love with this guy, love at first sight. Charlotte's like, "Are you crazy?" But they start dating, and a few months later,
it's a book launch.
Kyle says launching a book about his career in baseball and coming out.
Yeah.
And they're having it at this gay bookstore.
Yeah.
I like that they had a whole shelf for erotic comics in there. That was...
Yeah. There was actually... This was an understated gag, the shelves.
Yeah.
Because they had a shelf lesbian humour, and it was completely empty except for one book.
Yes. Yes, and then Leo, the landlord, ex-boyfriend, hits Ethan on the head with that book, and he says, "Don't hit me with lesbian humor," or something like that.
Yes.
Again, the lines on paper are good. Everything is working on paper.
Yeah. Well, certain things working on paper.
Yes.
The gags are working on paper.
Yes.
And I have a theory about that,
Okay.
which we'll return to.
Okay. Also at this, by the way, at this book launch, there's also a gay Republican guy that's trying to sell his book.
Yeah, his surname's Bear.
Yeah.
He's got like Charles Bear or something.
Chester. Yeah.
Chester Bear is his name.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't think he's a bear as the subculture defines it. He's not particularly hairy, but he is large.
Yeah.
And kind of beefy.
Yeah.
And he is very kind of like overwhelming.
Yeah.
And he's a log cabin Republican. So log cabin Republicans are gay Republicans, essentially. It's a gay Republican advocacy organization that came into existence, I think, in the late 70s.
Okay.
Particularly to counter that senator that you mentioned earlier.
Jesse Helms.
Yeah, Jesse Helms. And his efforts to recriminalize or extra-criminalize. They endorsed Donald Trump in 2020.
Right.
They didn't endorse him in 2016, but they did endorse him in 2020, leading to the resignation of some people involved in it, but I mean...
Wow.
Eric Orner and the writers of this film clearly think they're scum.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah. So while this book signing is happening, Leo, the landlord / ex-boyfriend, tells Ethan that he's going to sell the house.
Casa Ryan.
Villa Ryan.
Villa Ryan, that's it.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Villa de Ryan, yeah.
Yeah. So Ethan goes into a spiral because of this. Because he's trying to get Kyle, the baseball player, to move into him. And he's right on the cusp of... He's been dropping hints to Kyle, we should move in together. But Kyle is on the fence, but but Ethan's like, he's almost there. If I have to sign a 1-year lease on some new place, this whole thing is going to fall apart. We can't move in together.
Yes. So, I mean, Ethan's defining characteristic is that he's spineless and indecisive because he was already uncomfortable at this book launch. Because Kyle is doing a lot of PDA. He's like dedicated the book to Ethan, and he keeps like gazing soulfully at him across the room. And Ethan is clearly uncomfortable, wants to be anywhere else. Yeah, and yet at the same time, he really, really wants to move in with Kyle because he's being kicked out of his house with Leo. Yeah. So he doesn't know, and then he doesn't know what he wants. And in fact, later in the film, when Kyle does invite him,
this is a huge issue, which we will get to. Meanwhile, we learn that Charlotte has broken up with her girlfriend.
Yep. And she's photoshopped cats onto all of her pictures.
Yes. And there's a book launch party, I guess at the Villa Leo, where this 19-year-old named Punch hits on Ethan.
Yep.
This actor has lines that are funny on paper.
Again, yeah.
Actor seems to have trouble.
This guy probably is 19.
Yeah.
Because he's incredibly boyish, very cute.
Yeah.
Hired for his looks, I think.
Yeah.
But can't deliver but can't act.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just kind of reading the lines almost, and he like knows it's a punchline. You know, you just kind of you can see through it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Ethan doesn't want to have anything to do with this guy, but the guy works for a real estate agency.
Yeah.
And he knows the worst real estate agent in the world. This lady who's super depressed that works there.
It's Sunny Deal.
Sunny Deal. And
incidentally, Sunny Deal is my favourite character in the movie. By miles.
Yes.
Because she's the only one that has an arc that interests me.
That is true. She does have a bit of an arc. But basically, this kid Punch is like, if you hire Sunny Deal, she will botch the sale of the house.
Yeah, because Ethan is a scumbag that would rather ruin Leo's life than move out.
But now we have a
his
plot
house.
for a 30-minute sitcom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is really a sitcom setup. We got to sabotage. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be the plot for the next 90 minutes. It's actually an 87-minute movie. But I was like, really? This is what we're doing? But meanwhile, someone, maybe it was Leo, recommends that Ethan move into this like retirement gardens.
It was Kyle. It was Kyle that recommended.
Kyle, okay. It's called Alistair Gardens, I think. Is that a thing?
I don't know.
Do people have to move into retirement homes if they are between places in California?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't really seem very plausible.
Yeah.
I mean, Ethan said... I mean, the script tries to address it, because Ethan says, I'm not a retiree. Why would I live in a retirement home?
Yeah.
And Kyle says, lots of people do it.
Yeah. And I was like, oh,
and it's
do they?
month to month.
That's true. It is month.
Yeah.
I guess, but you got to pay... Well, these days you got to pay a deposit of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's just something you can do if you're indigent and you just want to go live in a retirement village for a couple of weeks.
Weird plot point that felt maybe made up for the movie. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Might not be the case. There was a funny sex scene here with Kyle and Ethan where he actually makes Ethan put on a baseball, like a catcher's
helmet. And he
So
tells
he
him
can
he
get
has to
off.
slide home.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty graphic, actually, because they're naked.
Yeah, it would be, but again, there's only one camera angle through this whole thing, and I feel like...
They couldn't afford more than one camera.
Yeah,
you're right, there's only ever one angle.
can you cut and move the camera a bit or something,
Yes, yeah, you're right. You're right. They never cut to another angle.
Sometimes they do, but it's always too late. It's like in a conversation. Anyway, there's another scene here coming up where Charlotte, I guess she works at like a florist of some sort.
Yeah.
There's a scene where this woman comes in, and Ethan's like, oh, she's looking or something. And Charlotte's like, what are you talking about? And this woman has this like really eccentric, she picks up this plant and starts like making like licky, like she sticks out her tongue at it, like she's gonna lick it.
Yeah.
It's weird, that kind of would appear in the comic.
Yeah, but it doesn't really make sense.
In one of those lists of weird people that show up in flower shops.
Yeah. People that try to lick the flowers.
Yes. I'm not sure what it's doing in here.
I think maybe it was meant to show that she's coded as lesbian, because that she might be interested in Charlotte.
Right.
Because she's performing cunnilingus on a flower.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But as a joke, it doesn't land.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
And then doesn't go anywhere, because they just leave and this character never shows up again.
Yeah.
We never find out why she feels compelled to perform oral sex on flowers.
No, and I mean, I'm no expert in lesbians, but I'm like, is this part of the scene? If you see another lesbian across the room, you pretend to lick a flower, that's how you signal her?
Cishet males try to understand lesbian subculture.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, what is going on? Okay, now we meet Ethan's mom, who's played by Meredith Baxter.
Yes.
Maybe the biggest name in the movie.
It's so weird.
She's like 58 at this point. Looks pretty good.
She does look. But delivering all this crazy dialogue.
Yeah, so she is a event planner for same-sex couples.
Well, she just plans weddings, and she doesn't do...
No, she specializes in same-sex, I think.
Right, because right.
It may be might be weddings, might not just be...
Well, there are no gay weddings at this point in 2005. Instead, we have commitment ceremonies.
Yes.
But her introductory scene is her showing the three cake options.
Yeah.
Masculine and like butch femme, butch, and femme.
Yeah.
And the couple choose femme, and then we pan to them on the couch, and they're the most incredibly butch-looking lesbians you could imagine.
Yeah.
I must admit, I laughed at this.
Yes. Yeah. There were bits in this movie that I laughed at.
I certainly laughed
in
at
spite of the movie, I think.
Yeah.
Now we get some crazy. So we also learn here that mom, is actually living with this guy named Juarez, who is one of Ethan's ex-boyfriends.
Wild.
somehow, despite that breakup, he's still living in that house.
We never find out why. We learn almost nothing about this character.
No.
No character in this movie really gets developed properly, I feel.
And this is an 87-minute movie with a ton of characters in it. And I was rereading the Wikipedia page before we started, and still couldn't keep the names straight of who was who. And as you've been hearing me struggling with Kyle, Leo, Chester, like, which one was which again?
There are way too many characters, and they don't get the amount. None of the relationships get any kind of development.
Yes.
And in a film that's meant to be, I suppose, about character-based humor, when it's not doing funny.
Well, I think part of the problem is each one of these characters is a stereotype. Chester is the gay Republican. Does he have any other personality traits?
No.
Does Kyle...
Chester's very much a stereotype. I completely agree.
Yeah.
But we've got Leo, like we've got the ex-boyfriend Leo, who is quite like spoilers. He's Mr. Right. He's the one that Ethan is supposed to be with.
That's a big spoiler because I had no idea that he was the one I was supposed to be rooting for.
Exactly, because they don't put in any...
There was I had no idea until like an hour in the movie. It's like, oh, is this the guy that's supposed to be the one?
That's right.
And then we get to the final scene and it's like, oh, this is the guy that's the one? I had no idea.
Exactly right, because the film does not put in the work to establish people's relationships or why they're important. It's a big problem.
Yeah.
Where Ethan is supposed to undergo some kind of character growth and figure out who's the right person he's supposed to be with, except we're utterly in the dark about who that's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because characters flit in and out.
Yes.
And the screenwriters don't know how to show a real organic kind of relationship between people that would signal to us, the audience, how they relate to one another.
Yes. In fact, I thought Leo's name was Ryan.
Because it was Villa de Ryan.
Ryan, for maybe an hour of the movie. And then when they started talking about Leo, I was like, what? Who's that? Okay, here's a crazy scene. Mom is cooking in the kitchen.
Yep.
This is the most Birdemic Neil Breen scene in the movie. Mom is cooking in the kitchen. Ethan's in there with her. They're talking about his love life or whatever, his struggles. He has to move out.
He doesn't have... I don't even know what he does for a job, because all anyone ever talks about is...
Yeah. So while they're in the kitchen,
troubles.
Mom says, oh, and you need to get your videotapes out of here. I was watching a video with Grandma, and it turned out to be this porno, whatever. Yeah. She picks up the tape and hands it to him. They're in the kitchen.
Yeah, why would the tape...
Why is the tape right there next to Meredith Baxter's hand to hand over? Why can't they walk into the other room? Guess what? They don't have time to do their camera setup and go into another room. The gag on paper has just been put on screen.
Yep.
And it's like a sitcom gag. It really is like something where you've got a 3-wall room.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to hand this thing over to somebody else. And there's no explanation for why the videotape is in the kitchen.
Yep. Incidentally, VHS tapes. I mean, this is 2005.
Yeah.
Cast your mind way back to History of Violence. History of Violence came out in 2005, and it would, if you might remember, it was the last big budget movie to get a VHS release. So I guess this joke works. People were still watching VHS tapes in 2005, barely.
Right.
But not in the sense that you keep your VHS tapes in the kitchen.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So, by the way, we hear about that he had an ex named Etienne, who in the comic we know is the guy from Montreal.
Yeah.
I don't know if they mentioned Montreal here, but it comes out, I think, in this conversation. But it made me think, like, oh, is this like in the future? Or is this like set after the comic strip? I got this vague thought. It's nothing like that.
They didn't put in that much work.
Punch shows up, I think, at Ethan's apartment.
Yeah, he shows up because he's brought Sunny Deal with him.
Oh. Yes.
And Leo's there too, because she's about to inspect the house for the sale. And she comes in.
But this is the first time where we get a sudden Family Guy smash cut to a flashback. We get a smash cut to Punch in a junior high school play where he was playing a broccoli and he was coming on to somebody who's playing some other vegetable.
Well, why did this come up? He was talking about how he can seduce anybody or something like that, right?
I don't know, but this movie's 87 minutes long. I was like, do we have time for this? What are we doing? And it's not like good.
I didn't like this cut this smash cut, as you said, but it did feel a lot like something that would appear in the comic.
Yeah, this is the thing. They're kind of trying to put the comic on screen, but don't have the chops to do it, if you know what I mean. And maybe if we had set up at the beginning, imagine if we had opened with some panels from the comic strip.
Yes.
Later on, when we get Sunny Deal's backstory, that's done as animation, and it's drawn by Eric Orner.
Yes, it is, yes.
Maybe if more of the stuff had been done that way, instead of trying to cut to this humorous swipe cut to a flashback. Yeah. I don't know.
No, I completely agree. They needed to lean more into the comic.
Yeah.
If you want to have this comic style humor, which they definitely have in it, you needed, I think, to lean more into recognizing that this was a comic originally.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like American Splendor.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go that far.
No. But you need some kind of justification for the structure of these wacky things you're going to do.
Yeah.
That wasn't the scene with Sunny Deal. That's a bit later. In this scene, he just shows up and tries to strip naked and have sex with them.
That's right.
And then Ethan kicks him out.
Yes, that's right.
Meanwhile, the Hat Sisters are at the Republican National Convention.
Yes.
Which is, they seem to have pulled, like, right out of the ship. They're kind of half-dressed in, like
yes, the Hat Sisters
undercover, with they're wearing hard hats and, like, reflective vests, like, as if they're in security gear or construction gear, but they've got their skirts on.
But they're doing a thing that they would be doing in the comic.
Yes.
Like a metaphorical kind of like journey to strike back at the forces of homophobia.
Yeah.
In this case, it makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. They've just touched some wires together in a corridor.
Yeah.
And it's made, I think George H.W. Bush announced to the, or is it George W?
It's George Jr.
George
no,
Jr.
It's just 2005.
Okay, so it's W. So he's announcing to the world that he supports gay marriage.
Yes. By touching wires together, they've done this. Yeah, how... what?
The Hat Sisters don't make any sense.
And they're just in a hallway in, like, maybe a hotel or something. They've obviously just, like, stolen this shot.
Yeah, they've just showed up in a hotel. Yeah, the Hat Sisters don't make sense because even in the strip, Ethan did not appear in strips with the Hat Sisters.
Yes.
They were different kinds of strips.
Yeah, well, they kind of did sometimes, but so when they went on an adventure to, like, take down some homophobic policy somewhere, Ethan was not in those.
No.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, you know, like.
But here I think he's calling them for advice about.
Well, they're meant to be kind of like the wise elder character.
By the way,
there is Obi-Wan Kenobis.
Yes, we do need to talk about the actors because we have a new feature on the show. It's going to be the fascinating feature of whenever we identify Star Trek actors.
Yes, love a Star Trek reference.
Yes. So one of them is Richard Riehle. 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 You probably recognize this actor. He's been in hundreds of
character actor that's been in so many movies. He has several Star Trek credits, but the one, I think his most memorable one was that he appeared in the Next Generation episode The Inner Light, where Picard experiences a lifetime in 20 minutes, one of the best episodes of television ever made. He plays sort of like a mayor figure.
Yes.
In Picard's kind of like hallucination.
Fascinating.
Yes. And the other Hat Sister is Joel Brooks.
Who was
on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Has very few kind of credits.
Yeah.
And he was on Deep Space Nine in a terrible episode of Deep Space Nine called Move Along Home. In the first season.
Yeah.
Where he was Master Serchid Fellow of the Wadi delegation. I think one of the first times people from the Gamma Quadrant showed up on the show.
Right.
And the only thing they were interested in doing was playing games.
And they had this board game that sucked the characters into it. And they had this song called Alamarain, Count to 4.
Alamarain.
Then 3 more.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrible.
Such a shit episode.
Terrible, but I recognized his face immediately.
I did too. It was wild.
Fascinating.
And he was great in this.
Yeah, they're both pretty good in it, actually. I think they're well cast for this.
As mustachioed middle-aged men in dresses.
Yeah.
Rain. Like Quark cheats them at Dabo, and then they suck him into the board game.
Yes. Okay, so now Ethan goes on a date with Kyle at this restaurant.
That's right. But the Hat Sisters call him from the hotel because they've seen Kyle there for some reason.
Okay.
I don't know why he's there. But they notice that he's working himself up to a big announcement, and they tell Ethan
that's right.
that he's going to invite Ethan to come and live with him.
Oh, this is what makes this scene even crazier, because Ethan is convinced that Kyle's going to break up with him. This is the big announcement.
Yep.
He's terrified.
He doesn't believe the Hat Sisters. He thinks that they're wrong.
That makes this scene even worse.
Yep.
So we get this restaurant scene, which is maybe the best lit scene in the movie. It actually looks like a real movie for this one scene. And Kyle, the hot baseball boyfriend that they've been dating for 4 months, says to Ethan, let's move in together. Mm-hmm. Ethan is like, no way.
Yeah.
Now, there's actually great reaction shots from everybody in the restaurant going, what's he doing?
Yeah.
But they're like strangers, or like, why is he saying no to this guy?
Yeah.
That actually works well.
Yes, it works fine.
Okay, but we have not established we're at the 20-minute point that Ethan is a commitment phobe of this extreme, that he would suddenly turn on a dime when he gets the thing he wants and is like, I can't move in with you, we're breaking up.
Yep.
And one scene before, he was terrified that he would break up with him.
We really need, I don't know, maybe an internal monologue or something.
Yes.
Or something like Hamlet. I
Yes.
hate to compare this movie with Hamlet. But, something like a monologue where he talks about... Instead, it just seems like he's just being self-destructive for no reason.
Yes, exactly.
And that's reinforced by the reactions of the people around him who just cannot believe that he's done this.
And I couldn't believe it either. I was like, what am I watching? Why is this happening?
The film wants us, I think, to see that Ethan will sabotage any situation where... The thing is, it hasn't done the work, though. Will Ethan...
Exactly.
Yeah. Will Ethan just destroy any situation that might improve his circumstances? Is he that self-destructive? No one is that self-destructive, but we're not given any other explanation for why he behaves this way. He just seems...
We don't even get a scene showing him behaving in a similar way with a previous boyfriend.
Exactly.
We don't get Charlotte saying, you do the same thing all the time. Why'd you break up with your boyfriend? And we don't get Ethan saying, he was too clingy. We don't get any of that.
No character gets that kind of background. It's so infuriating.
Yep. And then the next scene, Ethan's in tears to Charlotte.
Why? Why is he in tears? I thought... What? And he keeps calling Kyle now. And Kyle won't take his calls anymore. And Kyle's wife is yelling at him.
Yes.
Why is Kyle's wife yelling at him?
Yeah. Why is she still in the picture?
Yeah. I guess he's calling... I don't know. He was supposed to play like a charity baseball game.
There is a kind of running gag about the phone calls in this movie where sometimes Ethan will call somebody and that person's speech has been like recorded and it's just a long string of dialogue that just played over whatever Ethan is saying.
Yeah.
It's a gag that's done 2 times.
Yeah, at least
maybe it should have been done 3 times for comedy.
Yeah, rule of 3.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, now we get a flashback to Ethan playing this dream date game and with these girls at a slumber party or whatever. And he's all depressed. He's like becoming a slob. Now, this is when Punch comes back with the real estate agent.
Right,
and
Sunny Deal.
A terrible stock music of like comedy type of music.
The music's so bad.
The music's so off.
There's an even worse bit later on. Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
But this scene really stuck out to me. It's like like where they just bought this music. I refuse to believe somebody scored this movie. If he did, then he stole the music and didn't tell the producers. But she's a real mess, this lady.
Yeah.
But
she's got a cigarette hanging out her mouth. She just looks... Her hair's an absolute rat's nest.
Yeah.
And she can't even be spoken to without flipping out.
Yeah.
In fact, when Leo just asks her like a simple question, she just starts screaming and everyone runs out of the house. Or when the first inspection comes and they just sort of... They're thrilled. They want to buy the place as soon as they walk in. But just the act of them wanting to buy the place freaks Sunny Deal out so much that she starts screaming. And we get so Ethan goes and talks to Punch and says, what's the deal with her? Mm-hmm. And Punch gives Ethan her backstory in this segment animated by
Eric Orner.
We really needed more of Eric Orner's kind of work, I think.
Yeah.
We really needed more of these sequences, these kind of like dream sequences.
Yes, because...
Maybe,
but here's the problem. Sunny Deal comes in, this woman is a complete mess, but they've told Leo that she's the best real estate agent in the state or whatever.
Yep.
she'll take the house to auction, it'll get a huge amount of money. But based on the woman that comes in, why would you hire her? Now, I think
she's already been hired at this
What
point.
type of movie is this? This is a movie where I watched Dumb and Dumber, rewatched it a few nights back, and that's a world where Sunny Deal could walk into a room and somebody would hire her to be a real estate agent. It's like, oh, you're the best real estate agent in the world? Okay, you're hired. I think in the world that we've given this movie, because it looks like a cheap sitcom, I don't believe that Leo would be like, yeah, you seem like a good agent, you're hired. Why not fire her and get somebody in who seems...
The fact that he never fires her after this point, I suppose at this point it's plausible that he's hired her sight unseen.
Right.
Because we've already got buyers coming in.
Right, yes.
But why wouldn't he get rid of her the instant he saw what she was like?
Yes,
especially
exactly.
since she screams hysterically and the buyers and everybody else run out of the house.
Also, the buyers walk in a second later. That seems odd. It's her first time walking in his house.
Yeah.
It's one of these things that they're like... It's like the VHS gag. The writer has an idea for a gag and is forcing it into the movie. We have to have the buyers come in this scene. We can't have a second scene
where the buyers
come in or something like that. It's just all crammed in. This is not the worst cramming scene. There's one later that's like, holy moly.
Yeah, I can't. That scene. Yeah, that scene has terrible music too. But yeah, so. I actually kind of like the Sunny Deal character, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Again, there's stuff in the movie that's like...
This person can act, and which helps.
Yeah.
And like I said, her story interested me. I was interested. I was not at all interested in Ethan's story because he's contemptible.
Yes.
And I didn't understand his relationships with anyone else.
Yes.
Whereas Sunny Deal's relationship made perfect sense. So she ends up making a complete reversal, of course, because she finds love. With Charlotte, who's been dumped.
Yeah.
And then she just becomes this dreamy, incredibly happy person.
Yes. Yes. But...
I suppose in a sitcom that would be a 30-second
Is this movie supposed to be realistic, or is it supposed to be this really crazy stuff like Sunny Deal, this woman who's completely
Well, her backstory is
up.
Nonsense, because she was raised by wolves.
That's right, she was raised by wolves, all that kind of... This woman was raised by wolves, then she sleeps with Charlotte, and then suddenly she's fine. That belongs in a different movie than all this other stuff that's
it's supposed
happening.
to be a comedy of manners or whatever, yeah.
Right. And
people raised by wolves don't belong in a comedy of manners.
And if this is going to be a goofball comedy, you can't shoot it like this. This is not... You don't have the budget to shoot that, to make that kind of movie.
Yeah. It's not grounded because it has all this crazy shit in it, yeah.
So, outside, Leo confronts Ethan about his shallowness and all his breakups. I can't remember why that conversation came up at that point in time.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah. So Ethan sleeps with Punch.
Yep.
They're kind of in a relationship. They want to...
I think Ethan is wants to be in a relationship or feels like he is in a relationship with Punch.
Yeah.
And Punch is clearly like a fuckboy and...
Yeah.
He's always getting texts about show up to the sex party, like literal texts saying come to the sex party.
Come to the sex party. Yes. He's a horn. His first line of his mouth when he first met Ethan was like, "I'm
horny" or something like that.
Yeah, something about hornier than anyone you've ever met or something like that. I'm trying to remember what happens next.
There's a cyber dating bit. So this is 05, so when... what is the internet? No one's on the internet. No one has a computer. So no one ever Googles anything.
Yeah.
Later on...
Punch is trying to arrange a threesome.
That's what's happening?
I think it's him, Ethan, they want to find a third person.
Do you remember in American Pie 2...
I think that's what's happening in this...
It's a... You know, like a computer just exists, I suppose, so that you could watch a video of... There's a program that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
They're having like multiple Zoom calls with 5 different I guess gay stereotypes, like a guy in leather and all stuff like that. Although I must admit there was another funny bit here where it was another Klaus-esque moment where Ethan doesn't want to go on the internet to look for a partner because he says, everyone lies on their profile. And then we get a short cutaway bit where we see all the people lying about who they are, you know, there's like a really creepy looking married guy who says that he's like a buff like daddy and and then there's like 2 old guys to talk about how young and hot they are.
Yeah.
This is a really funny segment, actually.
Yeah, actually, yes.
It doesn't go, but like these segments are few and far between. And then we go back and it's very 2005 idea of what the internet is.
Yeah.
There's like chat windows open with videos.
Yes, there's 4 windows open, and they're all like guys that are holding perfectly still. I think.
So I think the joke was meant to be we thought we were looking at photos.
Still photos, yeah.
But then it turned out to be live video.
Yeah.
Okay. And then his mum shows up because...
Yeah, because one of them is Juarez.
Yeah.
And then she shows up where Juarez is and is like, Ethan, is that you? Looking at him on the other end.
Doesn't really land.
No.
I can see why it might be funny on paper. Then his mum shows up.
Yes.
Oh, how awkward is that? You're cruising for a third in with your twink boyfriend.
Yeah.
And, mum shows up, but it doesn't land at all.
Yeah.
Because it looks so cheap and weird.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, Leo is packing up the house.
Yep.
To get ready to sell or to move the rest of his stuff out.
Right, because he thought when those people went screaming that they wanted to buy the house or something.
Don't know.
Who knows?
But he ends up having this kind of nostalgic one-night stand with Ethan.
Apropos of nothing.
They're watching their old commitment video. Commitment ceremony.
Well, Leo's watching it.
Leo's
and
watching
then
it.
Ethan wanders in and he sees them. It's when they moved into
Villa, that's what it was, yes.
Villa Ryan. They'd only been dating 3 months.
Yeah.
And then, Leo's like overwhelmed with the nostalgia and gets, I guess, a nostalgia boner. And then they have sex.
Yeah.
And I just remember watching this and go, where did this come from?
Agreed. Yep, don't know where it came from.
It was like... Leo was his, like, kind of cranky landlord that had dated him briefly years before, and he was living in his house.
Yeah.
At no point was set up a mutual attraction. At no point was set up...
No, I thought from that first bookstore scene, it seemed like I didn't really get a vibe at all from them. There was no chemistry between these
No
two.
chemistry. That's a big part of it, yeah. No chemistry. No, but not even in the script.
Yeah, no sense that I really miss you, Leo. Why can't we get back together or something?
There was no sense he's pointing up to Leo.
Even if Ethan had a conversation with Charlotte saying...
Oh, Leo was the one that got away. If only I could get back with Leo, then we could keep living in this house.
Yeah.
Maybe set up a comedy manners moment where he seduces Leo wanting to stay in the house and then realizes he has feelings for him. No, that's too much effort.
Yeah.
Instead, they just sleep together and then leave. And then Leo leaves the next morning.
Yeah. Yeah, he's packing up his car, he's going, and he's like, I'm no good for you. I work in a bookstore. By the way, you can tell this is pre-housing market crash 2008, because this guy owns a house.
Yeah.
He's a catch.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that he works in a bookstore. This man owns property. He's like, I'm no good for you. I work in a bookstore. I'm like, are you kidding?
You own at least one house and possibly 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's like, Ethan, that was like a one-night stand.
But at the moment, Leo is just one of 3 guys that Ethan has relations with. We get no sense that he's the one.
That's right. This is a big, weird problem. Okay, meanwhile, he also reveals in this scene that he is engaged to Chester, the gay Republican.
Again, from nowhere. We didn't even know they had a relationship.
Nope, did not.
We weren't told that. No, we definitely weren't told that.
No.
He was just giving a speech at the book launch the last time we saw him.
Yeah.
And now, I'm pregnant and it's Chester's.
Yeah.
Like, it just comes from nowhere.
Yeah. And Mom is the one planning their commitment ceremony.
I wouldn't have taken that job if I were Ethan's mother.
Yes,
but then
and I would not let Juarez live in my house.
She already lets Juarez
Mom is very insensitive for a lady that caters to same-sex couples.
Damn right.
Okay, now we... Okay, I'm trying to figure... Okay,
where the hell were we?
There's a double date with Punch and Ethan, with Chester and Leo.
We do get some voiceovers in this scene, don't we?
Yes, but why are they?
But not ever else in the rest of the movie.
We get their inner thoughts of these characters at these four
inner monologues. Yeah, you're right.
In this,
why not do this in the rest of the film?
Yeah, very.
I guess again, I suppose this is kind of like the comic, which leaps from storytelling style to storytelling style, But you can do that in a comic because you're reading it on a week-to-week basis. This is a film.
You could do it in a film if you could establish
They
right away that where everything's going to be mixed up.
That's for sure.
Oh yeah, and so Punch breaks up with Ethan saying that you're not mature enough for me. Again, it's a gag that works on paper.
Yeah, because he's 19 and Ethan's 27.
You can see the gag. You can see the gag. You can see the joke. But somehow it just feels forced coming out of this kid's mouth.
Yep.
Now we get this weird scene where everybody starts coming over to...
Yeah, so what...
Villa Ryan.
Incidentally, they go to the toilet in that restaurant scene, and I've written, this is the worst restroom set I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because it is clearly not a toilet.
It's two walls. Yeah, that's right.
We've got Chester and Ethan standing way too close to one another, allegedly urinating.
Yeah.
But behind them is just like a corridor.
Yeah.
It looks like they're standing in a literal corridor.
Yeah.
You couldn't go in the restrooms to shoot this?
Yeah.
Well, I guess you couldn't shoot them front on if it was an actual restroom, because you can't stand where the urinals are.
That's right.
So instead, but really, you couldn't build a set.
It actually looks like, and there's like I'm looking at this shot right now. There's like a shelf.
Yes.
Like a shelf for knickknacks behind them.
Yes.
This is supposed to be a bathroom. It looks like the same hallway where they shot the RNC. Actually.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. Like I said, this was shot in 2 weeks. So
in fact, the door has like that locking mechanism on top, like in a hotel for the stairwell.
Yes.
Good.
A safety door. It's a safety door for like a fire door. I think you're right, Kumar. I think this is the same corridor where the Hat Sisters were in earlier.
Oh my god. Okay.
So cheap.
Okay.
So this next scene, they're clearly, again, on paper, they're going for a PG Wodehouse style.
Yes. Hijinks, slapstick.
Culmination of, hijink. Ridiculous situation upon ridiculous situation. Like where people keep blundering in.
Yeah.
Someone has to be hustled off into another room when someone else comes in.
Yeah.
They really, really want this scene to be that.
Yeah. And the music's going doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop.
The music here is awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah. It's really projecting what it wants the scene to be.
But because we only have one camera and we don't have a big set.
Yeah. And also, why are all these people showing up? And then Kyle, Punch, and there's three of these guys. There's a threesome that happens in the back.
Why are they having a threesome?
Yes.
Are they just... Why?
Yeah. And
there was no reason for them to have a threesome. They just started having one.
They just did.
All three of these people were there.
Yeah.
For a purpose different from sleeping with any of the three people that ended up in the threesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe on paper they were supposed to end up in a compromising position that looked like they were.
I love the Wikipedia line about this scene. It says, in an odd moment, Leo, Punch, and Kyle end up in a torrid threesome in Ethan's bedroom. In an odd moment. That's how it's described. It is very odd.
Wrote that and then very tongue-in-cheek.
People keep coming in like Chester. Why is Chester show? Every single person in the movie shows up in this scene except for Mom, I think. And... including, this is, I think, when we find out that Sonny Deal has slept with Charlotte.
It's before this.
Okay. But she's there, too, and Chester comes in, and the Hat Sisters are there, and Chester's offended that Leo has been in this... Wait a second, is the threesome, they all have a near breakup or something at this scene?
Yeah. So, I think Leo's gone AWOL just before the commitment ceremony or something. And Chester's ringing everyone frantically, and Chester thinks that Leo is at Ethan's house.
Right.
And Ethan keeps saying, no, he's not here. But then Leo does show up. Meanwhile, Kyle is there and Punch is there.
Yeah.
So Kyle has come to try and rekindle with Ethan. But Ethan doesn't want to rekindle with Kyle because Punch has come back and he thinks he has another chance with Punch. Punch is having... Or Ethan's just worried about having these two men in the house at the same time.
Yeah.
He tries to get rid of Kyle, but he can't. He sends Kyle into the room. Kyle finds a note that he left for Punch saying, I'll get rid of Kyle. Leo shows up wanting just to talk with his friend about his cold feet. Then I think Charlotte shows up and he doesn't want Charlotte to... Because Charlotte lives there.
Yeah.
I mean, on paper, there's a reason for all these people to be here.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it's not shot properly.
Yeah.
Because they have one camera and because they're not filming it on a stage where they can get good angles, it's not on a set, where they can't set it up so that we can see people hiding nervously in different locations around the house. Instead, this is an actual house. So the shots that you can block are very restricted because this is a real house.
Yeah.
So Ethan will push someone in a cupboard or something, but then that's it. We never see them again.
Yeah.
We need to see them hiding or moving around.
We need a camera setup. We need another setup for that shot. We need that shot. We need this shot. We need to edit this all together into a thing that's funny.
So this scene is a disaster.
Imagine if there were some overhead shots.
Yeah.
Imagine if they could have done that and got this person running around that way or doing something.
It would have been really that. Then it would have worked.
Yeah, or even something from a low angle for some comedic effect, or any sort of variation.
Yes, but they couldn't because they were in an actual house.
Yes,
because this film has no sets.
But it's not even that being the actual house; they just can't. They're not stopping to set up another shot.
True.
It's. I mean, they're there, but they're all the same. They're always at eye level. Like there's no variation.
Well,
it's very clumsy.
Yeah. They didn't have time to set it up.
And I'm glad you figured out like the order of people coming in and why they came in, because I started checking out as soon as like I knew what was happening and that terrible music came on, and it was just obvious that they were what they were going for, and they were trying so hard, and it was obvious that they're trying hard. I was like,
it was awful to watch.
Yeah.
It was so cringe-inducing to see what they were trying to go for and just wasn't working.
Yes, that's the best word for it. And then Kyle ends up like having to walk around in the curtains, like the bathroom curtain.
Yeah. So
it's not even is it the shower? Maybe it is the shower curtain.
It's a shower curtain.
Yeah.
There's scenes that make like Ethan yanks Kyle's underwear off at one point in a scene that makes no sense. Because at one stage he's just pulling on his undies trying to hold him back, and the next stage the undies are off.
Yeah.
You can't pull a person's underwear off horizontally.
Right. But there's like, I have an idea for a funny gag.
He needs to be
shoehorned
naked.
They've had to shoehorn, like many of the gags, like some of the gags do work on paper, but a lot of them, like the VHS one, are just shoehorned in there. I've gotten a funny idea where the aunt has been accidentally watched Ethan's porno, but how can we work this in? Well, the tape's got to be on the kitchen table.
On paper, Ethan and Kyle wrestle, and Kyle ends up naked, and Kyle is then pushed into a room with a showering punch. Looks good on paper, but when you have to film it, it's hard to have someone yank off someone else's underwear organically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't see that. We just see the underwear fly after we see him just tugging on it horizontally. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the wedding scene, which follows immediately after this one, because Leo goes through with the wedding.
Yes.
It's kind of funny because Chester Bear has all these obnoxious things he insists on doing.
Yeah.
All of these obnoxious kind of like rituals he insists on inserting into their commitment ceremony. So he does like a love yodel.
Yeah.
He has the new gay men's chorus or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Perform a Native American love chant.
Yeah. All this stuff again would have. It feels like a sitcom. Like it feels like it would have been on Cheers on a wedding episode where Woody got married.
Yep.
And he's like, or on Golden Girls where somebody. Who's the one that was always talking about Olaf, her Saint Olaf or whatever? Anyway, the Betty White character would always say that kind of stuff. It would be like something she would do.
Sure. Yeah, of course. But this worked a lot better than the preceding scene, I think.
Oh, yes.
Because Chester's obnoxious, and seeing him do these obnoxious things kind of landed.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Ethan has realised that Leo is the one.
Yeah.
Because he's run into the girl who tormented him.
Oh, yeah, by chance, the one who tormented him playing that Dream Date game.
What are the odds?
I thought she was somebody he knew, like a sister or a cousin. Why was he... So he was playing this game with some stranger?
I guess.
As a child, and he meets that stranger in California 20 years later?
Makes no sense.
I don't know. Who was that
Maybe they drifted apart. And he ran into her coincidentally, and her life's clearly a mess, I guess, because she's working at the front desk of a hotel where I guess no sensible person would want to work. And she's... and her hair's the same. It's all messy, and she's using an inhaler.
Yeah.
And I guess the message is...
I guess she won the Dream Date game, but in real life it didn't work out.
Right.
And he got the dud, so maybe the lesson is that he could flip in real life. He doesn't have to go by...
Yeah, what is the message? Like, there is no message.
No.
Well, I guess the message is that she was wrong because now she works at a front desk. That seems...
Right.
You shouldn't have listened to her because look what a mess she is now. She didn't get the...
Yeah.
It's not exactly a sophisticated analogy.
Yeah.
So then he decides to The Graduate it. So he goes back to his house and because, of course, this is pre-internet-ish in 2005, he's looking everywhere for the invitation rather than just Googling the venue.
Yes. Or he maybe can't remember the name of the venue.
He couldn't... Well, yeah, he couldn't remember the name of the venue, but of course it would all be on... Nowadays, of course, it would all be on Facebook and shit like that.
Yes, yeah, of course.
So there's a kind of... I feel a little bit uninvolved from this sequence.
You know what? There's a...
Because he doesn't call...
There's an interesting thing about, like,
everyone has
cell
mobile phones, yeah.
Because Punch is constantly... His phone's constantly going off, inviting him to these sex parties, etc.
Yeah.
But he asks Ethan. Ethan doesn't have a mobile phone. And Punch says to him, ooh, a gay man without a mobile phone, that's... I've never seen anything hotter or something like that.
Something weird hotter. Like that,
yeah. There's a...
Juarez is guarding the door to the church or whatever.
Yeah, he's the bouncer.
Why?
Yeah.
He tries to stop Ethan from going in. Ethan goes in. Then Ethan's mother wrestles him to the ground.
Yeah. By the way, there was a gag when he was looking for the... invitation, he was going through all those porn mags under his bed, and he also pulled out Kafka's The Metamorphosis.
Yeah, I saw that. What was the point of that joke?
I think it's supposed to be a funny contrast, I guess.
Because it's all gay porn and the Metamorphosis. The Metamorphosis is their idea of high literature. Or
I guess.
The opposite of porn. Are we
supposed to believe that Ethan has an intellectual side, which has never been revealed earlier in the movie? I don't know. I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I just couldn't figure out what it was supposed to be. Is it that Ethan is supposed to be going through a metamorphosis here? But the metamorphosis is negative in the Metamorphosis.
Right. Yes. That's true. Maybe the writer hasn't read the Metamorphosis.
Probably not. Probably saw the title and thought, so
the commitment ceremony happens, but as was established in the very first bookstore scene, when Leo has to speak in public, he breaks out in hives. And in this case, he also breaks out in hives and has to be put on a respirator. He has to be taken out of the ceremony in an ambulance.
He has something like a heart attack. If you can't think of a way to end your scene, have a character have a heart... I forgot that it was foreshadowed. When I saw this, I was very disappointed.
Right.
It's like, they couldn't think of a way to end this scene except to have Ethan... And he doesn't choke out quickly either. It's like 5 minutes.
Well, listen, I had to watch that bookstore scene twice because of the audio.
Right.
I was like, what did he say? And it's like, he said, I had to put the earphones in. He breaks out in hives when he speaks in public.
Okay.
So it's not completely clear.
So, hang on. So this is a problem again. Okay. So he could, even if he wanted to marry Chester, he would have struggled in that situation.
Yes.
But the way the scene is played, we're supposed to think that he had that attack because he didn't want to marry Chester.
He didn't want to marry Chester, no.
He has a fear of public.
He should have had a commitment ceremony. He knows he can't speak in public.
Yeah. Right, whatever. So Leo goes off to hospital.
Yep. And
Ethan's moving into...
Ethan moves into a retirement village.
Yes.
I was like, what? Okay, this is really happening. Then, bizarrely, we get a the end card, as if this is the end of the movie, but then it fades back in from the end, and Leo, they're having speed dating in the old folks' home. All these old people are speed dating.
Yep.
And Leo is there.
Yep.
And Leo's talking to this old lady, saying how he gave Chester back his ring or something. He broke up with Chester.
Yeah. Well, he actually tells Ethan, marrying Chester was a mistake. Thanks for helping me see that.
Right.
Ethan didn't help him see that.
No, Ethan was wrestled to the ground, actually choked out by his mother.
Trying to stop the wedding.
He didn't reveal anything. Why is Leo here speed dating with old people?
Yeah.
Oh, does he say that he knew Ethan would be here? Was he just hoping Ethan would walk in while he was giving his key speech to this lady?
None of this is earned or set up. Does he repeat this
speech to every woman he sits down with in the hopes that Ethan will walk in that moment and hear it? What is this?
Nothing is earned or set up. Then Leo invites Ethan to move in with him. And does he move in with him? I don't remember. Does he refuse?
I think it might fade to credits.
Because I've
I
written
think
down...
he agrees, because they kiss. They have a...
I've written to where. Where are they going to move in? Because Leo sold his house, and he was going to move in with Chester. So does Leo even own a house at the moment? But I can't remember. Does maybe...
He's living somewhere else. He must be living with... Oh, no. He broke up with Chester at some point.
I can't even remember what Ethan says, whether Ethan says yes or no.
Well, they have a passionate kiss at the end as the credits are rolling.
Because if Ethan
so I have to assume that's a yes.
If Ethan said yes, then where are they going to move? If Ethan said no...
But he has to say yes, because otherwise he's gone nowhere in the movie, and this isn't one of those types of movies where
it could go... Because this movie has put no work into establishing what Ethan's character even is.
Yeah.
Either option is plausible.
Yes.
Ethan could say no, i.e. he's grown a backbone and wants to be independent. Or Ethan could say yes, in which case he's grown a backbone and realises that he can be with a person without losing his independence.
I see.
Either's plausible.
Yeah.
Because the film hasn't established a convincing character for anybody.
Yes. No, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But that's it at the hour. The passionate kiss comes at the 1 hour and 23 minute mark. And we've had like 30 characters, all sorts of like Family Guy type flashback scenes.
Yep.
Over the end credits, we get some of these dating site guys, or we get another kind of.
It's more perfect. It looks like a list thing from the comic, but again, it's the perfect date or perfect. It's the perfect date. It's the board game analogy.
That's the board game. That's right. Yeah.
So these are the guys from the board game.
Yeah. And that's it. Okay, now, do you have any information about this very obscure movie?
Not a great deal. Okay. I do know how much it made at the box office. Okay, it made $153,122, which obviously doesn't sound like a lot.
But the budget couldn't have been...
I mentioned the budget was extremely low. And of course, remember, this is an indie movie.
Yeah.
For comparison, Shortcomings made $700,000.
Okay.
So only roughly 6 times as much as this movie.
Okay.
And this is a film that had a very limited release. You know, like it did the festival. So it screened at festivals in 2005. And then had a limited theatrical release in 2006, which qualifies it for the podcast, I guess, because we tend to do films that have a theatrical release.
Yeah.
And that's when it made its $153,000.
Okay.
On the other hand, Jiu-Jitsu made $99,000. And that had a budget of $25 million.
Wow. Wow. That's something else. This thing couldn't have cost more than...
But like I said, I don't think these actors earned a lot of money.
No.
We've said
I think we shot very quickly.
2 weeks.
I think that 2 weeks, okay? I think like all the restaurant, like that, when he sees that girl working as a receptionist, that's at the same hotel as the RNC.
Yeah.
I bet the restaurant scenes are in the restaurant in that hotel.
There are like 3 sets.
Yeah.
2 sets.
Yeah.
And the scenes shot on the street, you know, they haven't changed lenses.
Yeah.
Or film.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's shocking how much the quality of the picture degrades when they're doing outdoor scenes and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, not an expensive production. So I wouldn't be surprised if it quote unquote made money.
Right.
But again, this is like a theatre circuit film, so
yeah. Festival circuit,
festival circuit film. So is making money even a concern? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric Orner was approached by the filmmakers at some point, obviously, personally, to ask him if he would license his comic for a film. He said, the filmmakers came to me originally and asked if they could do this. I didn't really take them seriously. He said, I'd had this kind of thing pitched to me before, and not a lot of people have the wherewithal to take an indie film from conception to completion. Okay? If these are the guys that were competent enough to take a film from conception to completion, I have no idea who was incompetent.
Yeah.
But yeah, he says it took like 4 years apparently from signing to when it came out.
Okay.
For the eventual.
Okay.
Orner had his doubts up until the movie's premiere. He said, I think I started taking it seriously once I took my seat at the Tribeca Film Fest in 2006 after I had invited everybody I knew. That's pretty much it for trivia. After this came out, Eric Orner tried to get an animated series based on the...
Okay.
But it didn't work out.
Right.
Now...
The retirement of the strip. Is that what we're going to talk about?
No, well, he retired on the strip to work at Disney.
Oh, okay. So it's just a coincidence.
Seems like it.
Okay.
Or maybe... Yeah, seems like it.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't because this film bombed is not why he walked away from the strip. It seems like he was already deciding to do that. He said in an interview I saw that he just felt like it was with the film coming out, it was an appropriate time to take a step back. Not because like everyone hated this movie or whatever. You read reviews, I read reviews. The reviews are generally not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but I mean, as far as money's concerned, it doesn't seem like a hugely negative amount of money for a film that has that is specifically for a very specific target audience.
Yeah.
I will hold off my further comments till we talk about adaptation. Okay. So first, let's talk about what do you think of the comic?
I think the comic's decent. It had some good gags in it. Probably was a bit heavy to read them all at once instead of once a week. I did like the flexibility of it. I don't think I'd be revisiting it, but I would give it a yay.
Cool. For me, I completely agree with you, and I'm voting nay.
Okay.
But I agree with you on all points.
Yeah.
It's just that this comic's not for me.
Yeah.
I understand also that it's... And also reading it now, you kind of like, what's the point? But we're in 2025.
Right.
But when this comic came out, it's a bit like way back Friday Foster.
Yeah.
When this comic came out, there weren't any comics like this.
Right.
So it was important at the time. And it is lighthearted and fun, but I just feel like it hasn't stood the test of time.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
What about the film?
I wanted to like it. There are some funny lines in it. He can see what's going to work, but obviously it's a terrible movie.
Yeah. Objectively, it's awful.
It is.
It's an awful mess.
The construction of the execution of it is really poor. It maybe if it had been given more money and thought, but like there's some stuff in there that is really amateur.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amateur is a good word. I think it might be the most amateur film we've done.
Yeah.
On the podcast in terms of just how unprofessional so many elements of the editing and the lighting and the use of and the camera angles and the sets.
Shall we do an Is This Worse Than Veronica at this moment?
Yeah, we should definitely do Is This Worse Than Veronica. What do you think? The fact that you're even thinking about comparing that schlock porn excrement unfavorably to this film.
Because the thing is, the one that's beaten it was what was the Viz comic? Fat Slags. Fat Slags was cinematically professional.
Very professional.
But it was worse than Veronica.
Yes.
Veronica was way more unprofessional than this. I mean, Danzig had better cameras.
Yeah.
His camera, whatever digital video he was using, I mean, it absolutely looks like Brazzers. Like, it looks like pornography.
What's Brazzers?
But it was at least that, I don't know. No, I don't think this is worse. I think Veronica's worse than this. Maybe.
Yes, Veronica is worse than this.
But I would watch Veronica again because it's funny.
Yeah.
In its incompetence.
That's true.
I wouldn't rewatch this.
No. No, God, no. God, is this worse than Veronica? No. In terms of its lack of... Like, as you say, Danzig had better cameras.
Yeah.
But Danzig's cinematography was even worse than this movie.
Yes, absolutely.
Because he kept trying to shoot it like a comic.
It was even worse. Remember there's a scene where the cops come in and they're like, put down the gun or whatever, and the gun is already down.
Yeah.
Like, and he's shot this.
Yeah. Or there were bits where like the rose wept onto like her nipple.
Yeah.
Except the rose was on one side of the room and she was on the other.
Yes.
And it's like you can do that in a comic.
Yes.
But in a film you need to show how they're related to one another in 3D space.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, Veronica. Yeah, Veronica's worse. But no, this is unforgivable how little work in a film where the comedy rests, or at least I suppose the story rests on the interaction among the characters. We get so little time to understand the characters' motivations, who they are, how they relate to one another, what they care about, and that's what's supposed to drive the story beats.
Yeah.
Unforgivable.
Yeah.
I had no idea why anyone pursued anyone.
Yeah.
Except for Punch, because he's like...
Yeah, he's just horny.
Yeah. Adaptation.
It's an A for me. Ethan in the comic to me was a likable guy that I wanted to see do well.
Yeah.
And, when in that sequence I talked about with the hospice, it's like, well, you want Ethan to become self-aware.
Yeah.
He's growing as a person in the comic strip over the course of the 15 years. And I also found that its observations about queer culture in 1989, 90 through 2005 were somehow more... This just felt like stereotypes. A lot of these characters just felt like gay stereotypes. Even though this is full of queer actors, probably the writer as well, maybe even the director, I don't know. But I felt like it was just cardboard cutouts.
I agree. It's not my place to say what it is and isn't relevant for it. But this felt like Bernard and Huey.
Yeah.
In the sense that the moment for this kind of story, I think it probably passed.
Right.
Certainly by 2025.
Yeah.
And probably by 2005 as well. Speaking of Jules Pfeiffer, I have a review from the Village Voice.
Okay.
Not by Jules Pfeiffer, but he said, if you're looking for the perfect date movie to celebrate gay pride, do yourself a favour. Rent some good porn and stay the hell away from Ethan Green. A needy, serial dating schlemel, or schlemiel, Ethan sometimes exuded a certain spineless charm on the page, but here he's a shallow, self-sabotaging mess.
Yeah.
And so is the movie.
Yeah. And why is he self-sabotaging? We don't know. No. I think, so it's a poor adaptation of a comic strip that had heart. And characters that built up, that had the advantage of building up over time just from our exposure to them.
For sure.
Yeah.
I did mention that I would come back to Orner again before I finish. So with adaptation, the bits I liked about the film, obviously the bits I liked about the film were anything that reminded me of the comic, I guess.
Yes.
So how does that fit into an adaptation? Well, Orner worked on the film.
Right.
As a consultant. He said in an article in the Washington Post in 2006, I didn't want to write the thing because I don't write screenplays. But I wanted to make sure my characters sounded like my characters and that they wouldn't do something that they wouldn't do on the page. End quote. The way I choose to interpret this is that I think, hope that he had some input into those scenes where we have comic-esque situations.
Yeah.
Like where we saw the kinds of people that misrepresent themselves.
Yes.
On the internet.
Yeah, that Ethan on screen is not like anything like Ethan in the comic.
No.
No.
What I'm choosing to believe, my headcanon, is that Orner's responsible for whenever the film felt like the comic.
Yes.
And everything else is the hacks that made the movie.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a naive adaptation as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, please like, rate, review, subscribe on whatever your platform is. I think we actually need the reviews on Apple Podcasts the most for some reason they say that. I'm not sure why that is. You can contact us through the email address that is in the show notes. You can also DM us through Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, or even Threads, or even leave a comment on YouTube. We do get some comments that way. And please join our Patreon at patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion. Next week, we will be covering the fourth and final Fantastic Four movie, the Josh Trank 2015...
Well, it depends on which podcast you listen to, I think, whether or not it's the final.
Yes.
But yes, we're doing Josh Trank's Fantastic Four next week, and Tim will be back.
Yes, so I think we're going to read issue 51 for sure, which is the This Man, This Monster issue, which is the first... It's the one right after the Galactus saga, I believe, and it's the first Negative Zone, which is, I think, what they lean into in the Trank version, but I think they call it something else. I haven't seen it.
Ultimate Fantastic Four also has the Negative Zone.
Okay. So
we're not reading that, so I don't know why I brought that up.
Well, they might have actually pulled from the Ultimate, because they often did. Like, Iron Man was almost entirely based on the Warren Ellis version of Iron Man.
Well, perhaps I'll read Ultimate Fantastic Four then, just for you.
Yeah. There was a recent Alex Ross remake of that story from about 4 or 5 years ago.
Of Ultimate Fantastic Four?
No,
the
of
Iron Man one?
51.
Okay.
51.
This Man, This Monster.
It's really, beautifully done.
Well, we'll talk about it a bit more next week then.
Shap 2, move along home!